Howdy y'all, Caleb here. Today we're talking about summoning. What's happened to our summoning in the new Battletome, and is it still viable? Now if you're like me and you played Seraphon before this Battletome was released, in the old Battletome, this is kind of what our table would look like, our games would look like, right? You would have hundreds of skinks and a Slon and an Astrolith bear over there in the corner. And that was your game plan. I'm going to summon enough stuff that you will not be able to get to the objective. So that's basically how we won. We had some tricks and tricks here and there to kind of score objectives, but it was just summon as much stuff on the board as we could. It's changed a little bit now. Summoning isn't nearly as strong. We have other tools. If you've been watching all these videos on my channel so far, then you see that we have a lot of other tools that we can use other than just spamming the board with skinks. So we're going to look at today, what does summoning in Starborne do for us? How can we utilize it? What's our projected outcome from the summoning? And maybe even take a look at a couple lists to see what the summoning lists kind of look like now. So in Starborne, they in the new Battletome, they've kind of split up a lot of our buffs into the Starborne and the Coalesced. So today we're going to look at Starborne, which is where our summoning is located at. So Starborne gives us a couple of different buffs. One is the Bravery is at 10 instead of whatever's on their War Scroll for all of our units. That's kind of nice, especially for skinks who have a pretty low Bravery of 5 in Coalesced. So we get a higher Bravery. We also get the Summoning, which is what we're going to talk about today. And then we also get the Teleport. The Teleport was our staple in the previous Battletome. We'd get 2 of them, because every self-respecting Seraphon player would take great remember in the old Battletome. Now we don't have that, so we only have 1 Teleport per turn, and now it takes place at the end of movement. Same thing for Summoning. We can gain a couple of different Celestial Conjuration points, which is the same thing we had last tome. And we will be able to use those points to summon in units at the end of movement. So we have a couple things that happen at the end of movement now. And teleport's not nearly as good as it used to be. It was kind of nice to be able to teleport stuff in the hero phase and then teleport back out. My favorite was always the ninja Slon. Teleport back behind somebody, cast Purple Sun, then teleport back out of there. That was always fun. But we don't get to do that now. We do have a teleport at the end of movement, which can be helpful for our summoning. So let's look at what we do to get our summoning points. Here's our Celestial Conjuration points. At the start of your hero phase, you get D3 if your Slon, Star, or Starseer is your general and is on the battlefield. You also get D3 if any Astrolith bears are on the battlefield. You don't get multiples for each Astrolith, and you don't get multiples for... Well, you only have 1 general, so in that first category, you're only getting 2 D3. Now, this is on the surface a little bit better. You used to only get 1 point for your general, and you would get D3 for your Astrolith bear. So far we're coming out ahead. Let's keep going though. In your hero phase, before you cast your first spell, the Salon loses that first spell, but gains D3 Celestial Conjuration points. You can do the same for an Oracle. They lose their first spell, but you gain D3 Celestial Conjuration points. So this is where we're taking the big hit, because it used to be same mechanic. You would lose a spell. You didn't have to lose your first spell. They kind of reworded that a little bit. Now you'll lose your first spell, and you get D3. It used to be a flat 3, and you could really plan on, I know I'm going to get this many, and I'm going to set up a roadmap for what I want to summon. I'm going to bring those models, and that's what I'm going to summon during the game. Now it's a lot more up to chance. So we've got 4 different ways to get D3 Celestial Conjuration points here from these models. We do have to bring some specific models, a Slon, Astrolith Bear, and an Oracle, that's the Troglodon, to get those things. So, the summon is at the end of your movement phase, wholly within 12 inches of a Slon, Oracle, or Astrolith, and more than 9 inches away from your enemy. So you do have a little bit of a new option here with the Oracle, and that Troglodon, he's going to kind of be your mobile command base there. He's going to be funneling a bunch of spells from your Slons and also summoning units from him, probably forward of where your Slon is hiding in the back. So also note here that teleport happens at the end of movement. That is important. So our points generation did take a hit. It's not nearly as consistent. It's going to be based on a roll, that D3 roll, but we can kind of playing around that what we think we might get. So I did kind of drop a chart here. Is it worth it? And here I think is kind of an example of what you might take. And you've got your Slon as your general, and he'll be generating anywhere from 2 to 6 Celestial Conjuration points, depending on what his D6 roll is. Because he's a general, he gets that extra one. Because he's a Slon, he can use his first spell. Also, Croak, you're probably not going to make him your general very often because he can't take a command trait or artifact. But he will be giving up his first spell for anywhere from 1 to 3. Astrolith gets that, also a D3 roll, and the Oracle gets a D3 roll. So your points are, you can see there on the table, and that minimum column, you may only end up with 25 points in a game. If you just roll terribly bad on those D3 rolls or get one of these guys killed early on, then you're going to be rolling kind of low. Your average is probably, you're going to max out about 50. You might get up to 75 if you just roll incredibly well on those D3, but you're looking at about 50 conjuration points for the game. If you played a lot of Seraphon previously, you could pretty reliably, without spending too much, get about 12 conjuration points, and that was enough to usually get 20 skinks per turn. So that's a lot of times what I planned on. I'd bring an extra 100 skinks so that you could summon in 20 per turn, and you could do that pretty reliably. Here, we're not going to be able to do that as much. We'll look at the cost of the summoning and what that's going to look like. Here, it's a lot less reliable to get that, and it costs a lot more. You can see up there it costs 980 points for those 4 characters, and your generation is not as good as it used to be. But maybe we can summon some more. Let's see what we can get for those points that we're going to be accruing. So here's our chart, and they have changed a lot of the Celestial Conjuration points. So you need to look at this and kind of plan ahead. We had some costs go up, like way up. The Engine of the Gods went from 18 Celestial Conjuration points to 30. So he went up a lot higher. I don't really know why. Maybe it's because the engine goes off in the shooting phase, which is after the movement, so you still have a chance to use it. But it had a better results previously in the Cosmic Engine, and so I don't know. It doesn't make too much sense to me. But there's some pretty good stuff on here. You had a lot of stuff go from 12 points down to 10. And so that kind of helps if you wanted to summon those things. But 10 skinks are still at 6. And so summoning those 20 skinks a turn makes it a little bit more difficult when they stayed at that 6 points. So I wanted to kind of see where is everything valued on this Celestial Conjuration. So I put up a color code here, and we're just doing a basic points per conjuration. And that midpoint is about 9 points per Celestial Conjuration point, and you can kind of see which ones are worth it and which ones aren't. It just kind of gives you a quick look. You can see that Engine of the Gods is way over costed, as you're only getting 8.7 points per Celestial Conjuration points. And you see some real winners there. The Bastiladon, he's only 220 points, but he only costs 20 Celestial Conjuration points, so he's got a good value there. And he'll be able to shoot once you summon him in. So I think if you can get up to 20, that's a good buy there. Some things that that showed up as not worth the points are Salamanders. And they're 80 points for 1 and 10 Celestial Conjuration points. So that came out to 8 points per CCP. But in my mind, they're still a great unit to summon in. Especially if they end up going up in points in the next General's Handbook, which many people think they will, it'll probably even out a little bit more. But I think they're a great model to bring in, or even the Razordons, because they got lots of shots too, and they both have enough range to shoot once they've teleported. Some things like the Eternity Warden, that shows us a great value, but I'm not going to summon that thing in. Source Old Blood, Source Scarvedon Cold One, all showing up as great values, but again, they're not going to get gonna get on my summoning radar. I'm gonna need bodies on summoning if I'm doing that, or something that can shoot and put in some immediate value as soon as I summon them in. Some things like the skinks, they're coming out at 10, which is above average, so I like that. They're, of course, always a great option to summon just because they're giving you bodies. They're only 6 points, so you're going to have a chance to get to those pretty quickly. So based on those points, if you were to just go for skinks based on that same lineup we had, you'd have, at minimum, 40 skinks a game, which is a lot lower than we used to be. You know, that's not quite 10 per turn, and you're not getting any turn 1 if you're rolling low. But you can max out 120, which is what, you know, that's more than what I was bringing in previously. So it can go high, but you're paying a lot for it. And I think as you see, as we look at some of these, some of the things that you can summon in with these points, it's just not making back its cost. Previously, all you'd have is the Slon and the Astrolith Bear, and you could bring in 100 skinks by the end of the game. Now you have to focus in on almost a half your army cost, 1,000 points, and you're bringing in, you know, on average 80 skinks. So it's 480 points. So you're not quite getting your money back there. You're still getting, you know, a free 480 points, but you've got to sacrifice a lot for it. And these guys don't have too much role other than their spell that they all share, unfortunately. So you can cast that one time, but you can't cast it all of them. And then you've got to get Croak in close. They do have some decent spells to cast, and you'll probably be using these. If you were running this, you'll be running pretty heavy bound endless spells in this list. At least I would. So let's look at some tips and tricks maybe for summoning. So summon and then teleport. Because the summoning happens at the end of movement, that's the same time your teleport happens. So you can summon in something and then teleport it if you need to. You still have the restriction of 9 inches away on the summons and also on the teleport. But if you need to summon in something, you know, Battletome and then teleport it away, or 10 skinks and then teleport them away to get an objective, you can. So you can summon and then teleport. That is kind of nice that you can do that. Summon and shoot units. There's quite a few units, if we look back at that list there, that turn out to be pretty good in their ability to shoot after the movement phase. So after you've summoned them in. The Engine of the Gods, if you can get up to that many points, it's okay. You have a chance for summoning. This is if you don't have another Engine of the Gods. You can use it to summon in some Saurus Warriors. Not real point effective to make that your sole use. The Stegodon can shoot. It's got the long range bow. You've got quite a few units that can. The Battletome I really like as a summon, just because he's scary, hard to take down. He's got that beautiful 1-up save, and he's got good range on him. You've also got the Salamanders and Razordons, not the Riperdactyls. Don't summon Riperdactyls. Salamanders and Razordons, they are great summoning targets. And then, of course, skinks if you need bodies. One thing that I have seen mentioned a lot, and that's the Chameleon Skinks. So, as far as I can tell, let me know if you know something different than I do, but I can't find anything in the FAQs or anything that says anything different. The Chameleon Skinks, if you summon them, you're going to set them up on the table, on the battlefield. Their War Scroll says, instead of setting them up, you can put them in reserve. Okay? Their War Scroll also says, at the end of movement, you can then put them on the board anywhere you want to, 9 inches away. All that happens at the end of movement. The end of movement, summon, set up. I'm not going to set them up. I'm going to put them in reserve. We're still in the end of movement. Now I'm putting them somewhere on the board. I think that's how that works. As far as I can tell, it's basically a free teleport. So you could still teleport something. If you had enough to summon in Chameleon Skinks, you could summon them in, put them in reserve instead of on the board, and then you can ambush them in out of range of what you were summoning there. So I think that can work. They're kind of expensive. You're only getting 5 little Chameleon Skinks for 10 points, but I think that's how that works. So I think that can be one trick that you can put in your belt there that you can have with Chameleon Skinks to give you a little extra movement especially if you're playing in Starborne. You gotta focus on those movement and the things that you can do there to win the game. And so maybe that's an extra trick we can do. I did a couple of lists here, and I wanted to get just a little goofy and say, what is the max amount I can throw into summoning? And so here is what we're doing on the max amount of summoning. And so we've got Lord Croak. He's gonna. I'm putting Croak in every one of my lists as much as I can. A Slon is my general, and then we're doing 2 more Slons. So we've got 3 Slons and Croak on the list. An Astrolith Bear and a Skink Oracle on Troglodon. Now that's a lot of points, but we're just trying to maximize how many things can we get Celestial Conjuration points from. In this list, I put some Source Guard just to help protect one of those Slons because they're going to be target priority. 2 units of Skinks, and then a bunch of Endless Spells. We still got 20 points left over there if you want a Triumph or you want another Endless Spell or upgrade one of those other spells to something else you like better. But there's a list. Now, this is a lot of points. What can we do with it? And so we can see here I've charted out how many Celestial Conjuration points we can expect, what's the maximum and minimum, and on average we're gonna summon in 80 Celestial Conjuration points. It works out to on average about 800 points. So you can get in an extra 800 points, maybe an extra 1200 if you're really successful. So it is possible to say, I'm bringing in Slaanesh levels of summoning. Unfortunately, your list is not going to be, I don't think your list is going to be very good. You're going to have to focus in on summoning a bunch of Skinks, I think, to get your bodies up, or just pump out Salamanders maybe. But your list is so hero heavy and no bodies. If you get Alpha Strike, which you will because you're really low on or you're really high on drops here, you'll lose these guys quick. And if you rolled poorly on all those D3 rolls and only got 8 Conjuration points turn 1, that would just be a blow to the heart there. You'd summon in 10 Skinks and say, well, that didn't work. On the other hand, if you did, if you did get max and you're summoning tons and tons of Skinks all game, it could work out well. But I don't think this is a winning strategy. I think this may be what they kind of looked at and said, look at how much you could summon out of this. You could theoretically get 200 Skinks into the game by turn 5 if you rolled max. And maybe they balanced it based on that instead of looking at this list isn't viable. Nobody's going to run 4 Slons in a list. Are they? If you do, let me know how it works. So I don't think that's realistic. I have practiced with the list with 3 Slons, and not a Troglodon, I think I had an Astrolith Bear. I had 3 Slons and a bunch of bound endless spells, and it worked pretty good. I was able to keep up some summoning enough to where it felt kind of like the old version where you were summoning about 20 Skinks a turn, so that was kind of nice. Another list I wanted to look at is kind of what I think is a more realistic list here. So we've got our Croak, and this time I put him as my general. I'm going to sacrifice a command trait. For the Slon's command traits aren't amazing. They do let you reroll a casting, which I think is really good. Casting, Unbinding, or Dispel, which I think is pretty good. But I wanted to fit in Croak into this list instead of a Slon, so I took him as my general so I could get the extra summoning points. So I take Croak as my general, Astrolith Bear, and a Troglodon. I really like the Troglodon when I can get my artifacts on him that I want, but I wasn't able to here. If he's got the Cloak of Feathers on him, streaming up the board and being my portal, I really like that. But here I had to put on the Fangs of Sotek on him. So I've got my Troglodon, I've got 2 Star Priests and a Priest. These guys are for my 40 blocks of Skinks that you'll see down there. I've got 80 Skinks on the board and 5 Source Guard just to protect Croak a little bit, give him a few extra wounds. And then 3 minimum units of Salamanders, along with some Geminids and Purple Sun. So I think this is a little bit better list than what the other one is, and you'll still be able to summon a little bit. So you're going to average, if you're giving up, Croak's spell and the Oracle spell, which you're not going to use anyway because Croak's going to cast the Comet through him. You'll hopefully, on average, generate enough points to summon in some Skinks turn 1. By the end of it, you'll average about 10 Skinks per turn for an extra 400 points or so. But I think this is a little bit more reasonable list, and so I think we kind of see that the summoning here is more of a benefit instead of something to strategize around. It's just a little bit too random in my mind to say I'm going to focus on a summoning list, and to me it's more of I'm going to build my list in Fangs of Sotek, Starborne, Draco's Tail, and the summoning is going to be extra. I'm going to get some extra bodies on the board, so I can kind of count on that throughout the game, but I'm not building a strategy around it. And so I think as we look at these costs here and what kind of points we're generating, we have to adjust our mindset a little bit. We're not a summon spam army anymore. It's more of a benefit. We're going to summon in a few models. We're going to summon in a Salamander every turn just to keep annoying our opponent with these Salamanders that just keep popping up and shooting mortals, or bodies if we need those. So I think that's where our summoning is at. Let me know if you've got another list that you like. Are you focusing on summoning in the Starborne? How many points are you generating? What's your average look like in the games that you've played? I know that the ones that I've played in Starborne, the summoning can help. It turns out to be about the same as like an Engine of the Gods and Coalesce. Every turn, every other turn, you'll bring in 10 bodies. That's kind of where our summoning's at. Maybe if you can double down on Starborne to where you're summoning warriors from the engine that you have in your list, and then putting out some normal summoning via the CCP points. Maybe that can help boost up those summoning numbers. All right, that's some summoning strategy for you for today. So let me know what you're doing with your summoning. What's on your sideboard? Are you bringing anything other than just 100 Skinks in your list to summon in? I know I'm targeting some Salamanders and Bastiladons if I can get high enough. I always love the Bastiladons. And I think Skinks, as always, you got to always have some extra Skinks in your pocket. All right, guys. We'll catch y'all next time.